Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's Money Talk Tuesday. This is about understanding your financial missteps. My name is Jack Martin. I'm a program assistant with the Office of Economic Empowerment. Today's presentation is brought to you by Aries Foundation. So we're going to go over about the Office of Economic Empowerment, followed by some housekeeping, and then we'll get into the presentation by Aries, followed by a Q&A session. So the Office of Economic Empowerment is a department within the Office of the Treasurer and Receiver General of Massachusetts, tasked with supporting, advocating, and facilitating policies that empower all Massachusetts residents. Our programs serve women, families, high school students, veterans, and seniors. Our priorities include financial education, closing the race and gender wage gap, racial equity, college affordability, and promoting STEM education. This is a webinar and not a meeting. As such, you will not be able to view other participants. You can, however, use the chat feature to communicate to the host and panelists. And you can also use the Q&A feature throughout the webinar to ask any questions. And if you could please complete the post survey after this webinar so we can continue to improve this program, that would be great. It'll pop up automatically on your screen and should only take about a minute or so. Registration for cohort 3 of our Worth and Wealth seminars is now open. The link will be in the chat for this. This is Valor y Dinero, and it's conducted entirely in Spanish. So if you or anyone you know is interested in these seminars, you can find the registration link in the chat. So thank you very much. To find out more about our upcoming Money Talk Tuesday, please visit bit.ly/OEE events. To explore other financial topics, please visit myfinanciallifema.org. And for questions or feedback, please email us at moneytalk@tre.state.ma.us. And all this information will be in the chat below. So I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm going to pass it on to Tom and Craig.
Appreciate that, Jack. I'm just going to bring my screen up here real quick and start that up. I just want to set it up for us here as I get, it's getting there. Technology is a wonderful thing. There we go. Okay. So as Jack said, and I appreciate that, Jack, thanks for the intro. This is Money Talk Tuesdays. We're doing Understanding Your Financial Missteps. And as Jack mentioned, it's brought to you by the Aries Foundation for Financial Education. A little bit about your presenters. My name is Tom Alessi. I'm the president of the Aries Foundation. I'm an investment advisor. It means I act as a fiduciary whenever giving guidance or advice to any of my clients. I want to bring in my vice president, Craig, if you want to introduce yourself.
Sure. So I'm Craig Richardson. I'm the vice president of the Aries Foundation. I've been doing financial services a little over 18 years now, and I specialize in work with families and small businesses to help them put together financial plans and achieve their financial goals.
Appreciate that. Craig will be chiming in as we go along, but also as Jack mentioned, for anybody out there, if you have questions as we're touching on some of this stuff, drop them into the chat box and either Jack or Craig will certainly bring that up for us. So we told you it's brought to you by the Aries Foundation for Financial Education. We're a nonprofit. You can check us out at www.ariesfoundation.org. And our mission at Aries is trying to help everyone have a better relationship with their money. Because whether you realize it or not, you are actually in a relationship with your money. And just like every other personal relationship that you might have, there are triggers and emotional behaviors that occur that can cause us to act, well, irrationally sometimes when it comes to handling our money and our finances. So all that Craig and I try to do, and the rest of the Aries team, is try to take some of that emotion out of dealing with your money. Today's agenda, it's Groundhog Day. We like this. We're going to go through that a little bit about what financial missteps really are, right? Some of the behaviors of those missteps that we do keep repeating, when it happens, why it happens. And then in 2 weeks' time, we're going to have the follow-up or conclusion of this, because it's a two-part series where we're actually going to go through the changes, the steps, ways that you can overcome or stop some of this repeating behavior. All right, so, Financial Groundhog Day. So this is, if for anybody who's ever seen the movie Groundhog Day or know about it, it's Bill Murray stuck in Puxatawney, Pennsylvania, and he's repeating the same day over and over again. So that's how Craig and I sort of talk about some of this repeating behavior that goes on. And one thing, and we were very clear, and certainly Jack and Sarah had mentioned it as well at the OEE, was that the titling for missteps was done purposely. We feel that if we're calling something a mistake, that it's very, very judgmental. There are a lot of repercussions that in behavior that we put on ourselves if we tell ourselves, specifically with finances, oh, I made a mistake, I'm, whatever terminology you want to use, I'm so stupid, I'm such an idiot. Like, all of that stuff is harmful behavior that can be worse than actually the thing that we did. So for Craig and I, we always call it missteps. And right, Craig, and what we're trying to do is try to get you to understand like the why behind it, right?
Yeah, I mean, I have never met anybody who hasn't made a few financial missteps. And it's always, the more you know, the better you do, right? So it's about getting information and making the best best decision you can at the time with the information that you have, and never looking backwards and going, well, that was terrible. It's about where are you right now and where do you want to go going forward.
Right, and that's important. Like it's trying. We'll talk about that with some of these missteps, some of these behaviors, some of things that we do. Some of it is we're aware of, like we know we're doing it. We're not really sure why, but some of it might be stuff we're doing where we're just not realizing that's causing such a problem for ourselves. And so the first one, and this gets more into the psychology of relationships, but like we said, you're in a relationship with your money. And one of the biggest things is about being truthful with yourself about the relationship that you have with your money. Like any relationship, like relationships fail every different level, everything, all over the place. But, one of those things is understanding what your own personal weaknesses or flaws are when dealing with that other person, or in this case, dealing with your money and your finances, right? So one of the things, if we're always blaming somebody else for something that's gone wrong, well, we're going to keep repeating some of that behavior, right? So you need to take a deep look at yourself, get a handle on some of those weaknesses or misunderstandings that may have contributed to your money flaws, right? And the problems that you have. It's important to understand the role that you played in all of this, because then you're less likely to repeat it. Like Craig said, the more you know, the better off you are. And there is a difference between knowing why a certain misstep happened and understanding how not to do it again, right, Craig, as far as going through with that?
Absolutely. I mean, a lot of things, people were dealing with money, we talk about the honesty piece, is, they will downplay how much they spend, or they will downplay how much debt they have, or overestimate their income, or earning potential. Well, I'm gonna win the lottery, so it's all gonna be fine. So it's having that honest relationship with yourself about what are your spending habits, what are your income needs,
Right.
and those are tough things to sometimes wrap your head around.
So that's the first thing, is sort of that being honest, or looking in the mirror, as the cliche might be, to sort of introspection about how you're dealing with money and what your relationship is with money, right? So then we go into some of the missteps that cause problems, right? So the first one is impulse buying, right? And look, we get it. Well, especially with everything that's going on, besides we went through 2 years of a pandemic with, technically still floating around on the edge of a pandemic, right? Now there's this war that's happening with Ukraine and Russia and things like that. And, sometimes we just want to feel better. And one of the ways we do that is go out and buy something, right? The problem is that this doesn't solve the issue of why we have either that feeling of, not feeling good about ourselves or not feeling well, and trying to solve it by purchasing something lasts very little amount, right? That's where you get buyer's remorse, right? I bought this thing because I wanted to feel really good, and then 2 days later, I now suddenly realize I don't feel so good anymore. And what happened?
You get that dopamine pump, right?
There you go.
That temporarily fixation of feeling a little bit better. You get the box in the mail from Amazon and go, oh, I got a box, and you go to open it and you feel good for about 15 minutes. Then it's, well, now I need another one, right? Now I need another one. It's like the next fix. And that's why impulse buying actually can become almost a habit.
Correct. And I just lost my screen, but that's okay. Let's see if I can make this move.
I can see your screen. I just can't see the next slide.
Yeah, no, that's why I lost the button there, right? So then the other one is overdraft fees, right? So whether you realize it or not, this is something that happens in 2019. The largest banks, any bank with over $1 billion basically in capitalization, they charged over $11 billion to bank customers in overdraft fees in 2019. That was an increase of over $500 million, $500 million from 2015 to 2019. And the reality is the bulk of that charge went to about 9% of the bank population, right? So it's the low balances, the people who are, living on the edge, and we'll go through this in a couple of slides because that's one of the things in terms of going through it. But just be aware that charge, that overdraft fee, it adds up over time. And if you're not thinking about it or not looking at it or just saying, oh, well, it happened, I'll just move on from here, these add up over time and cause problems.
And also, Worth, you tried to withdraw $20 and you got, not only did you not get to $20, but you got a $35 overdraft charge.
Right. Yeah. Or the other side, you tried to go to Dunks and get a cup of coffee, and next thing you know, the cup of coffee cost you $35, right? Because you had an overdraft.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And the other one is not paying bills on time. Right. Now, we understand there's usually a couple of reasons for this. The biggest one, the number one reason that everybody gives is that they forgot. Right? I have the bill, it came, I put it in the basket or wherever you had your folder, and then you didn't pay it. The second reason is that there wasn't enough money. We'll get to that in a little bit in terms of go through. Sometimes it's like, listen, I was not understanding the bill that I was supposed to pay or how it was supposed to be paid. Or I felt I was being overcharged on it, so I didn't pay it right away. All of this stuff leads to ongoing repeating behavior. We're past due, and now you're getting hit with a surcharge, a late fee, that doesn't get forgiven after the first time you say, I forgot or I didn't get to it. Right, Craig?
Oh, absolutely. The other thing too is, with people living paycheck to paycheck, especially having gone through 2 years of, COVID, is juggling bills. Right? Do I pay the mortgage or do I eat this month?
Correct. So there are parts that need to be dealt with and need to be thought about, but it's one of those repeating behaviors, right? So it's a misstep to be, get in front of paying the bills or set them up to be systematic. We're going to talk, like I said, in the next session in 2 weeks about the steps and ways that you can overcome some of these things and ways to take charge or be in control of it. But it's just to realize that this is something that you might be letting happen, and you've got to make changes to alter that. So again, this is more of charging everything, right? So this is using a credit card to pay for everything, and it's more of a psychological thing with it, which is just, sort of instead of, what was that with the shampoo, like rinse, repeat type of thing, it's swipe, repeat, right? Like everything now is I can swipe it, I can click on it, I can just get this any way I can. And you get into this habit of just buying everything on credit or on a credit card. And the problem is, where it runs into a problem is if you cannot pay that bill at the end of the month.
Is this a picture of your actual credit card?
I wish that was my actual credit card. I would want that to be my credit card.
All the things. I like it.
But that's the problem is it's okay to use the credit card, but only if you're within your spending limit and you're in your spending amount that you can pay it off at the end of the month. Because the minute you don't, Then we're carrying forward a balance, and the balance puts us onto the hamster wheel of debt. And the hamster wheel of debt is just that idea that I am constantly keeping up with I'm not paying it off. Like, we understand that debt is out there, but the problem for most people is they're not understanding the cost of debt, what it's cost to carrying that loan or that card or that payment, right? And what that means, and they don't have a well laid out or thought out plan to how they're going to get rid of or reduce the amounts that they have in debt. And what that leads to inevitably is getting back in, and there you're spinning in the cage again, right, Craig?
Absolutely. I mean, because like you said, it's rinse, repeat, right? Wash, rinse, repeat. You just, as soon as you get off and you get the bill paid down, and sometimes, you'll get that windfall, like taxes season right now. You get that tax return, and I'll say, okay, well, I'm going to pay off the Christmas debt I just had, right? But now you feel like, well, now the credit card's back to zero, so let's go and plan a vacation. We'll throw that on the card.
Right.
So you're all the time you're in this, like you said, wheel, and the credit card companies love it because they love getting your interest. So
yeah, and it just keeps going. And then the last one is sort of that, what do we want to call it? Keeping up with the Joneses, right? That's sort of the cliche, right? That you're spending over your limit on an ongoing basis because you're trying to keep up either with the neighbor got a new car, I should have a new car, or they're, like Craig said, they're going on vacation, we should go on vacation, or their kids have this, so I should have that, without considering what that's doing to what you're spending or what is within your limit of spending. And we'll talk a little bit more about this in a couple of slides in terms of behavior and what that leads to. But the idea of I'm trying to keep up with the Joneses, right, Craig?
yeah, and there's also, it's not easy. I mean, people shouldn't feel too bad because we're really beat up by the media as well, because they make us feel like we have this sense of entitlement that we should have everything now, right? We don't have to save for anything. We just put it on a card and buy it right now. Why do I have to delay my gratification, right? We want to be gratified today. Like you like to bring up beluga salt, right? I want it now. I want it now.
Right.
So, and like I said, in the marketing and all those types of things, put us in this mindset. Even like, Amazon, it's like one click and it comes to your door. So it's trying to, divide what is necessary, what you really need versus what you just want.
Yeah. Hey, Jack, do we have a poll question we were going to drop?
Yeah, we can do a couple in a row if you'd like to do that.
Yeah, there were two of them, right? And I blew by one. Yeah, it happens. I know. I knew I was going to do it. So if you want to drop let's drop the first poll question out there for everybody. So, did you set a financial goal for yourself this year? So we're talking about financial goals, and the question is, did you set a financial goal for yourself? It's a yes, no, or I'm still working on last year's goal. So we'll give you a minute to try to figure that out.
Need some game show music in the background for this.
Yeah, that's what is it? Jeopardy, right? That type of thing.
Yes.
So we have in response, all right, so we like to see that. So about 50% of the audience set financial goals for themselves this year. That's congratulations. That's a great thing. Still working on last year's goal. That's where you need to get ahead of yourself and start to figure it out. No, one of the questions then becomes, what are you trying to do? And there are other things that you're working on instead, which is fine. But it's one of those, we're big believers in trying to at least set small goals to get you to whatever you're trying to achieve. So why don't you drop the next one, Jack, just so we can catch up with everything. And I'll try to be better in terms of going along. All right, buyer's remorse. Have you ever experienced buyer's remorse? Regret after making a purchase. So this is buyer's remorse. It's a yes, no, or does yesterday count? Right? So did you ever buy something and then turn around in a day or so later and say, gee, why did I do that? Or I really shouldn't have purchased it? Yeah, overwhelming. And so just so everybody knows, it's a very, very, like we talked about, it's a very, very common thing, especially if you find yourself in an impulse buy or an impulse buying mode, or just like I'm trying to do something because I'm feeling down or feeling low. And so I want to buy something because, like Craig said, it's going to give me that rush and I'm going to experience it. So absolutely, it's something, but the trick is, and we'll talk about this in the next session in 2 weeks, ways to sort of overcome that impulse and to take steps to be better with it. Okay, so why do these, what happened there? There we go. So why do these, this is just, I've made the mistake so many times now that I might as well call it a tradition, right? So it's why does this happen? Why are we doing these things? And some of the reasoning behind that. So the first one, and we talked about it a little bit, which is the living paycheck to paycheck, right? So this, even though living paycheck to paycheck sounds like, well, gee, I don't have enough, there's too much month at the end of my money type of thing. But it also refers to people who just live in the moment, right? So they're really not thinking about planning down the road or being focused on stuff down the road. They're just literally thinking about what's going on either this week and next week. And I'm not really paying attention to anything. Living paycheck to paycheck people, they tend to be heavy ATM users. And they become very, very susceptible to those bank overdraft and service fees that we talked about before. Right, Greg?
No, absolutely. Because like you said, they're not setting up overdraft because they're not thinking forward. They're not doing a budget because, well, I've got another check, so there's more money in the bank account. I can keep moving. And as long as you keep moving, they can keep rolling.
Right. So long as the paycheck keeps coming in. And like we found out with the pandemic, where the average person out there has roughly around $400 in the bank as far as emergency reserves is concerned, it's a behavior that lends to some of those other things, i.e. debt and other things coming up. So it's just more, as Craig said, it's a down the road type of thinking and sort of getting yourself out of just living in the moment. All right, so this is having only one person handle all of the financial money matters in the household. Now we know for a lot of times this is a convenience thing, like one spouse versus the other just happens to be better with money or better with numbers, and so they're the person who's handling everything. There's nothing wrong with that. The problem is it can lead to the second person or the other spouse then now not having an idea or an understanding of the picture and being left out. And certainly if something happens to that main person who's handling all the money, then all of a sudden it becomes very overwhelming or daunting for the individual who is left to try to figure it all out, right? Greg, we run into this a lot.
Well, also, especially if you're a couple, there's lots of different ways that people handle money as couples. Some of them will combine their assets and their incomes and deal with money that way with joint accounts. Some people decide, to keep everything separate and they handle certain bills. There's no right or wrong way to do this. I think what Tom has alluded to is it's really about having good communication so that both parties know what is going on with our financial well-being. So, you don't just go out and spend money not knowing how it affects the overall budget or impact. Well, I want to make a vacation, but they don't understand, well, that doesn't fit in our budget. Or if we want to do a vacation, these are some of the things we'd have to cut or not do in order to make that happen. So it's really about, if you're going to have one person handle all the finances, which is fine, it's just a matter of making sure you're both involved in all those financial decisions.
Absolutely, because it's a big part of it in terms of that communication and open dialogue that goes with it. This is buying everything 100% in debt, right? So by that we mean, so you're making the purchase, and I don't care what it is, and a new car, a new iPhone, whatever, but I'm taking out, I'm financing it all, whether I'm getting a debt from the company or I'm using a credit card. I'm not putting any down payment. And the problem with that is it goes back to the whole hamster wheel of debt and the cost of that item. Whereas, some of the aspect is you should at least be putting something down versus buying it 100% in debt.
Well, it also depends too, Tom, on what kind of financing arrangements are you making, right? So say I'm getting a phone through one of my providers. Well, they may be giving me a 0 interest payment plan, and that's fine. However, if you're buying something on a credit card, like furniture or something like that, and you're paying 15 or 20% interest, well, that may not be fine because now you're paying 15 or 20% more for that item than you had planned on paying. So it's really understanding what you're financing and why, to know whether that's going to be what we call good or bad debt.
Right. But then it's also making sure that if you are doing that, that payment, that you are able to make it and finish it. If, you know, those zero numbers, there are always there's little caveats there. And if you don't pay it off, we're going to retro back to day one and hit you with this, as Craig said, 15 to 20% finance charge.
How does it all fit into your budget? And can you make that payment before the end of that term? Right.
And make sure that that's there. And then the last one is, Craig sort of alluded to it earlier, right? This is the quote from Veruca Salt from Willy Wonka, which is, give it to me now, right? This is the idea that the really this pro-consumerism, this pro-spending gets, you know, permeates everything. But mainly the idea is, you hear this a lot from people who say, you only live once. Like, so I'm going to spend it now, right? I'm not really going to be thinking about it later on. I'm, you know, what's the point of that? I want to, you know, live my life today, which is fine. And we understand that. But you want to be aware that there's got to be a balance, you know, that it's okay to be spending today, but you also got to be set up and spending tomorrow. And by tomorrow, we mean later on in life, because there has to be this trade-off between the two. If you're just pushing everything all in now and sort of hoping for, you know, I'm going to get hit by a train or early demise, well, then when you're in your 70s or early 80s, it's not going to be a pretty picture in terms of going through that.
The other thing, Tom, too, is not only understanding, you know, how much I can spend now and versus later, it's also why am I spending that? A lot of people, when they get surveyed, find out they spent a lot of money on things that didn't bring them any pleasure. Right. Sometimes what we find is when people try to be happy, it's, you know, spending money on experiences sometimes gives them a lot more happiness than spending money on, you know, consumer products. So try to understand the why I'm buying this item or why I'm spending this money. And sometimes, like I said, you may have a guilty pleasure that does bring you a lot of joy, and it's okay to spend your money on that. You have a hobby that you love, or you love to travel, or whatever that thing is. Just realize you can't do that on everything unless you have an unlimited amount of money.
Right. Right. There has to be some balance to it. And that's all. It's just ratcheting it back a little and don't get caught up in the like, oh, I've got to have everything today type of thing. All right. So then these are 5 reasons that we repeat the same behavior. And this isn't just about money, though some of it does come in with money, right? So the first thing is that we do things out of habit. This is just the way I've always done it. And we let ourselves get caught in that. Well, like we talked about, you know, I'm just swiping the card and using the card to do everything. And I'm not really thinking about, gee, what that cost me or what I did when I did it. So there is this having to take a look at how you spend your money. And like Craig said, why you spend your money. And are you doing this just because it's something that's ingrained and that you've always done? I wasn't sure if you were going to chime in there, Craig.
Oh, do you want me to chime in there?
No, that's okay. So the second reason is not getting around to it, right? So this is a big one with it. Just think of anything that you're trying to set. We asked about goals. Jack, did I blow by another one? No, I'm right there. I'm okay. See, I caught myself. So, you know, we asked about setting goals, right? So usually the conversation is, I'm going to take care of whatever it is, you know, X, Y, or Z next month or next week or next year or whatever the case may be. It's just we keep pushing things off and letting ourselves just get caught up in that. And, you know, I call it the merry-go-round of life, where I never step off the merry-go-round. It just keeps going round and round and round. And I never get to and do the thing that I said, which is why we asked the question about setting goals. Because setting goals at least puts somewhat of a stake in the ground. The merry-go-round probably didn't stop, but it slowed down a little bit, right? It, you know, at least it got a little slower, so you could get more of a grasp and a handle on what's going on.
I mean, the thing here too, Tom, is, you know, if you want to rationalize any type of behavior that you have, you can do that. There's a way to rationalize almost anything. I mean, Charles Manson could tell you it was a way to rationalize what he did, right? The issue is it going to get you to where you want to be? If that behavior is creating a situation that you don't want to be in, then it doesn't matter how you rationalize it, you're going to change it in order to get out of it.
Right, absolutely. Okay, Jack, poll question. I knew, and now I'm in the right place now. We got caught up. All right. Have you ever considered spending time to browse deals, sales before making a purchase? So this is that sort of, hey, have I taken a step back and said, well, gee, I wanted to buy X, but you know what? I'm going to look to see if it's on sale someplace else or if there's something similar. Yes, no, or who has the time to do that?
I have to get some sound effects for the next one.
Okay. Yeah, so very good. So the audience says that, overwhelming that yes, that they've done that they've taken the time, which is very, very good. That's great behavior. That's one of the things and one of the steps in terms of trying to eliminate some of that, getting caught up in an impulse buy type of thing. So tremendous for the audience there. One of the things is having this what we call a once and done mindset, right? It's meant more of, I set something up and I just never went back and checked it. And a lot of this is sometimes we sign up for things and then forget about it, right? So I signed up for a subscription or something and, I just never paid attention. And you know what? I'm still getting billed, 2 years later for the same thing. Or I set up to have this done and I didn't realize, Netflix has raised their rate 4 times since I signed up for Netflix now. And I'm still getting, the bill's still coming out where I haven't looked at switching over to some other type of streaming service. I've just left my Netflix going without thinking about it. So it's more of are you looking at or taking the time to step back and say, well, gee, is that really what I want to be spending it on, or should I look for something else? Here's another one. It's a same thing with the why we repeat behaviors. We take everything and just, well, you want to say, shove it in a drawer, shove it in a file folder, or do something with it where it's just, it comes in and I don't really think about it. And I just put it away, or I paid the bill. And then I just stuffed the bill in a drawer and I never looked at the bill itself. I just paid it, right? So a lot of times when we're putting stuff like that into a drawer, into a file or away, we forget about it and we don't think about it. And next thing you know, here we are, we've come back, it's the next month, and now I get this bill again, and now I'm looking at it and saying, well, hey, why did I pay this way type of thing, right, Craig?
Well, absolutely. I love this filing system right here. It's great.
Yeah.
At least everything's in one place, right?
Yes.
So, yeah, and I think that's, once again, that comes into the avoidance, right? I don't want to deal with this. It's too much to deal with right now. It's overwhelming. Yeah. Just put it in a pile. I'll get to it later. And then you just decide to look at it when you get around to it, which never happens. And so then, like I said, it's one of those things where if you don't control your debt and your spending, it will control you.
Right. So. Yeah, absolutely. And it's sort of similar to the last one there, which is we think we're getting away with it, right? So it's whatever it is. We've set something up, and hey, I'm getting away with this, or the bank's letting me draw this money, and they're not charging me for it today. But then next thing you know, I'm getting these late fees, or I'm getting hit with it. So it's more of this, realize that you're not going to pull one over on any institution as far as going through that. And as Craig said, yes, there are debt where you can, I'm getting it for zero, so I'm going to take more from that card, or, get lent that way. But if you don't pay it off, then it's going to retro back to day one, and they're going to hit you with a finance charge. And if you really read the fine little tiny print, it's at, the highest rate available, which in today's market, it's like 28%, Craig, right?
Yeah, it's crazy, depending on the state that the credit card company's through, right?
Correct. So it's one of those, things. Now, there are some personal reasons why we do repeat some of these missteps, and one of them is not being open to change, right? As Craig said, ignoring the issue or shying away or not addressing it head on. You know, listening to family and friends is tough. We get that. You know, it's never easy, but it's more of, right, Craig, having the communication, being open and talking about it. It tends to, if we shut ourselves down, especially with that, I talked about in the beginning, that mindset of, oh, I've made a mistake, I've done something wrong, I don't want to admit that to anybody,
You know,
right?
I have a Facebook account and I have a lot of good friends on Facebook. And what I notice is everything they do right, they post. No, nobody posts anything they do wrong, right?
Yeah.
So the same thing with finances. Nobody wants to get out there and shout from the rooftop or, hey, look at all the things I made mistakes on. And when we say mistakes, missteps, right?
Yeah.
The issue though is that in order to change your behavior, you have to recognize your behavior. You have to understand you have an issue. And even like I said, even listening to family and friends, sometimes that's what get people in trouble in the first place. Sometimes the family and friends don't know quite what they're talking about, right? So you get misinformation, which makes you have missteps. So it's really, if you, the more information you can gather, the more you can educate yourself, the better decisions you can make. And then you get a chance to take control of what's going on. Because there's no way to get around money. There's no way to get around having to do with finances. So you either want to do one of two things: keep your head in the sand and hoping it all works out, or find a way to take charge of your own situation.
Yeah, and one of the things that we recommend at Aries, like anytime we do any presentation, is that if you're dealing with whether it's legal, tax, or financial, that you always seek out the help of a professional with those questions, because that's what they're there to do, right? So it's always make sure that if you're really uncertain or don't know, seek out the help of a professional, because it'll help in terms of some guidance and just some ideas. One of the biggest things I will tell you that we find that the reason that the behaviors repeat themselves, and we call it the ego effect, right, is that the ego effect basically says that you're prone to making the same mistakes over and over again because you believe that it will change. Like, I did it, but next time I'm going to do it differently. Or I'm going to, it won't happen to me again, or I'm not the person who's going to be responsible for that. So it's this overwhelming belief that you are going to do it differently the next time because you can, versus actually saying I did something wrong and I need to change what that behavior was.
In other words, you're going to do the same thing and have a different outcome.
Right.
And I think that's a definition of insanity, isn't it?
It's close. It's not quite the definition of insanity, but it's close. And Einstein, just so you know, never said it, just so we're clear on that, because everybody says that Einstein's theory of insanity is doing the same behavior and expecting different results. That's actually not the case, but it's a long-held belief that he said it. Something that you learn, right? So understanding, as we said to you from the beginning, money is a relationship, right? And money takes on a lot of different emotions. And so you've got to sort of be clear with the emotions that you're feeling and dealing with. And a lot of times they are, working compatible, they're working against each other, they're going in different directions. But the five that are listed, they're really the relation, the different types of emotions that we feel with money: euphoria, envy, shame, anger, and fear. And as Craig said, fear may be one of the biggest drivers, and that's fear of not being open and communicating. And envy, certainly that brings up hey, I'm fear of missing out, right? FOMO, and I'm not participating, I've got to participate. The Joneses got a new car, so I got to get a new car type of thing. So you just be aware that these emotions come with money, and that if you can try to figure it out and get a little bit of a check in terms of yourself and say, gee, why am I doing this just because I want to make myself feel good? As Craig said, if that's the case, and sometimes we need it, okay. But if we're doing that on an ongoing basis and it's causing us to get into any of the situations that we talked about, then you really need to be putting yourself in check and saying, wait a minute, why am I doing it? And is there something else I could do instead?
You have a poll question for us, Tom?
Poll question. See, he caught me.
Trying.
No, didn't we get the last one? Oh, we do have one more. Ha ha. See, it was on that. See, so financial advice from others. Ever had the thought, if I had only listened to and fill in the blank, my family, my sister, my brother, the uncle, friends, someone else about something? And that's yes, no, or all the time. Thank you for catching that, Craig. I did blow by it.
I didn't, Jack did. You got our back, buddy.
Appreciate that, Jack. Yeah, so financial advice from others. So have you ever thought, and so, more of the audience saying yes, that you have. For those who said no, again, that could be a thing of, you're good in a good place by yourself. Sometimes though, you want to look at that and is the ego effect in place? Right. And by that, we mean, are you just saying, I made a mistake. I don't want to tell anybody, but I know I'll change it myself next time type of thing. So it's one of those situations that you want to be looking at and thinking about. Like if you're not turning to somebody and asking or saying, what did you do? Why did that happen?
The other thing, Tom, is, you and I have been doing this for quite a while, and I don't think there's a day that goes by that I don't learn something new about money, because everything keeps changing, right? Tax laws change, rules change, Bitcoin's a whole new thing on the horizon that's changing what's going on with money. So for the average person who doesn't do this full time, sometimes it can be impossible to keep up with all the things that affect their financial future.
Right.
So you shouldn't beat yourself up if you don't know.
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
And so, one of the things that we do at Aries and try to help everybody out with is to get that clear vision, right? So in this case, that would be sort of trying to wind your way through the emotional journey of dealing with money and finances. Because it's difficult, as Greg said. It's very hard to get a handle on it sometimes. Sometimes we feel very, very overwhelmed and just daunting challenge, especially when it comes to dealing with debt. And so, part of the mission behind Aries is trying to help everybody sort of get a little guidance to that. And one of the things that we do for everybody is we offer what we call the roadmap to financial awesomeness. And so it's just trying to help you be the most awesome self you can as far as financially aware. And we do that. There's no cost. There's no obligation for it. If you're interested and you want to set up a time to chat with us, we're happy to do that. You just drop yes into the chat box. One of us will reach out to you. But you think of it as almost like a blueprint or a roadmap to where you're trying to get or what you're trying to resolve with any of your issues.
I also, just for convenience sake, Tom, drop our calendar link into the chat box. So if someone just wants to go on and book appointment for themselves, whenever is convenient for them, they can just go on that link and do that.
See, great idea. See, that's why he's here. That's why he's the navigator in terms of going through that. Perfect. So as Greg said, that link is in the chat box. If you just copy it or if you just click on it, it'll take you right to the calendar and you can schedule a time. Like I said, there's no obligation, there's no cost. We're just happy to have a chat because a lot of times we know trying to ask questions in a webinar format isn't the easiest and most convenient thing. This is Craig in our more formal attire. We're out and about usually and doing things in different locations and different organizations. And we are so excited. Yes, those are TB12 jerseys. They are custom TB12 jerseys, but he retired. We kept him even though he went down to Tampa. We kept him because he was still playing and he's the greatest of all time. But now he's unretired again. See, we knew that was going to happen, so we kept him. So we don't have to do anything until after this coming football season. And it's still tough to find Mac Jones jerseys, so we're not there yet. Next one, as I said, that'll be on 4-5, and that's breaking the repeating financial missteps cycle, right? The steps and strategies, what you can do and ways that you can get around some of these behaviors and some steps you can take to try to ensure that you don't repeat that behavior. If you do have questions, you can visit the website. Again, it's www.ariesfoundation.org. Or you can email us info@ariesfoundation.org at any time. We're happy to try to answer any questions that somebody might have. And on that note, I'm going to say, are there any questions for us in the chat box?
We don't have any questions in the chat box, but Sarah was nice enough to put the registration for the next event, the link into the chat box. So it's there now if you want to register for the next event.
Perfect. So we try to do these in about 45 minutes, which is what we came to. So I'm going to give it a second. And if anybody has any questions or anything that's come up, feel free to drop it in the chat box. Otherwise, Jack, I'll turn it back over to you.
Yeah, thank you both. And again, if anyone has any questions, you can drop those in the chat. I'll start with a question, and if we have any questions after, we can get to those. But change can take a long time, and you mentioned that you'll get to the ways we can change during part 2 of the event on April 5th. But what can we do in the meantime to sort of hold ourselves accountable in our financial goals?
Well, so first off, it's a great question, Jack, because change doesn't matter. Change is hard, right? And no matter what you do, change is difficult. Change in your financial world is even more difficult because a lot of times this is stuff that you've always done. And some of it's been passed down from the previous generation. My parents did it this way, so this is how I'm doing it. One of the things that you can do, like Craig had mentioned early on, I hate to use the B word, which is budget. But one of the things you can do is try to get a handle on how you're spending your money. For us, we don't really care how you spend your money. It's your money. You do whatever you want with it. But it's more important to know how much you're spending and what you're spending it on. So I would say that would be the first part of the challenge, to get your mind wrapped around how am I spending my money, because that'll sort of drive some of where those behaviors are coming from. Right, Craig?
Yeah, and I answer Jack's question with another question. How do you eat an elephant? Right? One bite at a time, right? So when you're looking at making financial change, you shouldn't be trying to say, I'm going to change everything tomorrow. Just
Right.
like, I'm not trying to lose weight, I'm going to lose 50 pounds by next week, right? What you want to do is, what are the realistic goals? What are the things that are really an issue right now that, that are top of mind? And what are your longer term issues that you want to deal with? And then you kind of map that out and deal with one step at a time. And like I said, if you can't figure that out yourself, when you start working with a financial advisor or a financial professional, they're going to try to take you through that process anyway. But as Tom said, change is very, very difficult for most people. If it wasn't, there wouldn't be so many diet commercials. There wouldn't be so many of these, call apps. There wouldn't be all these things that, try to help people make change. The thing is to take it in small pieces. What can I change today? Can I just track how many coffees did I buy this week? How many times did I go to the ATM? And even Tom says, take a little register and write it down. Right. Oh, you need a pen and a paper, that old fashioned tool. Yeah. Or either that or a tablet and chalk, whatever works for you. Right. But make sure you're kind of trying to give yourself a little bit of accountability, at least even on a smaller scale, so you can start ramping up.
But that's also why we talked about setting goals. That's why we asked the poll question about setting goals, because setting goals is important. And it's a big part of, even if they're small incremental goals, which is usually what we recommend to people, set small goals and build towards something larger, because it's that sense, that psychology of I've completed something and I'm moving on to the next portion. And the more we do, the more we want to get it done, the more we strive towards hitting that goal.
Absolutely. Well, thank you both very much for this very insightful presentation. As we mentioned, the registration for our next Money Talk Tuesday is in the chat, so you can find that there. Again, thank you both very much, and thank you for everyone who joined us, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Appreciate it, Jack, and thanks for reminding us with the polls. We appreciate the backup there in terms of it, and Sarah, appreciate it as well. Thanks for all the help today.
Of course. Thank you.
Take care.